to episode 1 of the OSO Spurs podcast, where the Ange revolution has begun, and we have a full house tonight and an excellent agenda to go through. So let's start with Stu. How are you, mate?
All good, thanks. Happy to be back.
Good to have you back. And we got Sai. How are you?
Yeah, hello, mate. Tip top.
Good to see you. We have Johnny in Dublin.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
And we have Deej. How are you, mate? Back home.
Better, now that I'm no longer in Kansas.
Yes, well. Pleased to have you back, everyone. And so we've got some exciting things to talk about today. We obviously have the draw against Brentford, numerous performances to discuss. You know, Vicario, Van de Ven, Sanchez, Kulu, Son, Bissouma, all to dive into in different areas. I also want to touch on that new away kit. Is it a keeper? I've heard a lot of love for it. I've seen a lot of hate for it. Then we're going to preview the Man United game. But before we finish as well, let's just have a quick discussion about Chelsea's outrageous spending and how on earth they are escaping the clutches of financial fair play. And does that even exist? Or is it just a Faguzzi? I think you answered that's the answer right there. But we will discuss that in more detail. So let's start with the positives, right? We've just come off the back of a draw. But it's a draw. It's a game which we lost heavily last season. And I certainly think there were some green shoots in the performance. What did you think of it, Stu?
Yeah, I was obviously compared to the last 4 or 5 years, it was a breath of fresh air. But I have to say, after the way we played the friendlies, I was a little bit disappointed. I didn't think we were as well organized. I didn't think there was as much movement off the ball. I didn't think there was as much creativity. So that part kind of disappointed me a little. But all in all, it was lovely to see us dominating, kind of camped on someone else's half rather than camped on the edge of our 16-yard box defending for our lives. So no, I was really really happy that this is a start and hopefully the beginning of better things.
Good stuff. What about you, Johnny? What do you make of the result?
I concur with most of what Stu's just said. I suppose you really want to look for the positives, given that it's the first game under a new manager in the Premier League, and there are some. You've got some stats that, up on our chat there, Jim, but there's a lot of really interesting statistics that obviously we completely dominated the possession. I think there was only one game last season where we got more possession, which was against Bournemouth away. It was almost 70%, 69.6%. According to the Premier League.
Wow, so that was the second. That was already would be the second highest possession we had of last season in that game. That's amazing.
Also, the youngest starting 11 since March 2020, which is really encouraging. And also another one which I thought was really interesting was that it's the first time since 2004 when we played 3 debutants in one game, which is actually really, really, I think that says a lot actually about the manager as well. We've got obviously Udogie and VDV and Vicario all starting, and it is the case. Even Pochettino, they did to kind of hold back. I mean, remember when we signed Reece, how long it took for him to get on the pitch. So, I thought that those things were really great, and obviously there were some individual performances. I'm sure we'll get into. Looking at Bissouma was unbelievable. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and most of the game, Maddison was superb. He kind of ducked in and out a little bit. Udogie was another one. I think most people would say those 3 are the ones that stood out. It's a point which I think we've got to say in the second half we were looking far more likely than Brentford to score, and it was a bit disappointing that we didn't get the win, given that I think we probably just about edged it. But a lot to be very positive about. That's sort of my overall takeaway from it.
I saw Deej kind of throw his hands in the air in exasperation as you stole his discussion around Bissouma.
I was just...
Deej, did you have something to say about him?
Beautiful. Incredible player that I think showed what he can bring to a team when the manager isn't pretending like he can't play football. So that's pretty cool. I think that I was very much loved Bissouma's performance. Just the way that he is able to manipulate the ball in tight spaces is wonderful. His passing range, as we all kind of knew, isn't as expansive as some other sixes, but his line breaking capability just through dribbles alone are wonderful. I also my other kind of standout performer in that he didn't stand out much is Van de Ven, because I think he barely put a foot wrong, with the exception of commentary trying to drum up a second questionable penalty against us. He was pretty brilliant the whole game, and I was very impressed with his, especially on debut, with another debutant that I think did very
felt
good next to him.
So I was going to say, I just felt really sorry for him that, he was the cause of the second goal with that deflection.
Yeah.
His performance didn't, merit that.
Yeah, I think that second goal was just it was literally just unfortunate, and it's gonna probably bring some unnecessary hate onto Vicario because his name doesn't rhyme with Lavid Baya. So yeah, I think Vicario, he needs to become more decisive, but I think that's probably just a nerves thing. So I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was bad by any stretch.
I do think there's a bit of a stigma though when you look young and you're quite skinny and you're put in goal in the Premier League, and you kind of like it just takes away a little bit of confidence that person's assured between the sticks. But Josiah, before we dive into the intricacies, what was your thought on the game? Was there anything in particular that you noticed as a highlight there?
Yeah, I think echo what everybody else has said. I think the if there is a disappointment, Stu's sort of alluded to it, the front three looked a bit lethargic at times, and I think that there were times where we could have moved the ball quicker in transition. There were times in that at the end of the first half where we got the ball in some good positions where we could move it quickly, but we sort of fell back into a little bit of a sideways before moving forwards. You do that with Brentford, you're in a whole lot of trouble because they're back into their defensive shape straight away. And we were sat in the pub, and they just defended to the edges of the box. They let us go wide. They were quite happy for us to go wide and push us out wide. But I think we've mentioned Maddison. I think if you look at two particular pieces of play, one, the free kick for Romero's goal, just bought that all day long. I mean, he just stepped in front of the defender, got that extra half a yard, went in front, bang in the back, foul all day long, and he'll buy those all season. And even with the second goal, he would if we wouldn't have scored there, it would have come back for a free kick, because he got taken out in almost exactly the same way. So he's going to get a lot of stuff out on that right-hand side. And that delivery for the first goal, oh, my God. If he wasn't concussed from the first challenge, Romero would have definitely been concussed from that second challenge.
He was definitely wobbly, wasn't he?
And you heard the force of when it hit his head. He just sort of like, yeah. But I think Maddison is going to be amazing. Bissouma, oh my God, he had touches of the Dembele's about him. I think
big time.
Where they just couldn't seem to get the ball off him. He'd run into three players and they'd been stood looking at each other.
He was creating space out of nothing.
At the end of it, yeah, I think he's going to be absolutely immense for us. Brentford are a difficult side. It's a difficult place to go. They're so well drilled. They're so well disciplined. And, you look at Thomas Frank's comments in the interviews afterwards. They played the mid to low block and invited us on. And that's going to be where we're going to have some challenges, I think, this season, and on how that front three are going to operate effectively against teams like that. Very different kettle of fish on next Saturday evening when Man United come to town, because that's going to give us a whole other heap of challenges to overcome. But I mean, I don't think we could have asked for much more. They had me out my seat a couple of times in the pub with the play. I enjoyed watching it for the first time in I don't know how long. I enjoyed watching a Tottenham game. Come on, this is what we're after. And I think Postecoglou afterwards said, whilst it wasn't really anywhere near where they want to be, he's shown the intent, and they've shown the intent of how we want to play as a team. And I think we had 18 shots with 6 on target, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that for me, agree with everything else the chaps have said. Not gonna pick out any more there, but yeah, I liked what I saw. If we continue to play like that, we'll win way more games than we lose, and we'll come up against teams that are way worse than Brentford as well. That will struggle with us.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
I think that
One other thing that I wanted to point out with the was just the performance of Richarlison, which I have a feeling was, I mean, according to sentiment, he should never play for us again if you pull part of Twitter, but whatever. And like a lot of people were saying that he wasn't being involved enough, but that's kind of the role that Postecoglou strikers play. I saw on Twitter somewhere that last season their center forward averaged 15 touches per 90. And that it still bagged loads. It's just that's kind of the thing. You press, you make yourself available in the box. He had some good runs that on another day he gets on the end of and probably scores. But yeah, I think
it's spot on. Even Ange said after the game that he blamed the other forwards for not involving Richarlison enough, and I think the fact that both, in my opinion, Kulu and Son had poor games, they weren't able to get past their men. They weren't able to create the chances for Richarlison to finish off in the box. So, just like Kane, he needs someone to feed him.
Of course.
Exactly.
There's the whole narrative, isn't there, that people are desperate to be proven right on, which is Tottenham can't do it without Kane and Richarlison's rubbish.
And you got all that crap from Shea.
Yeah,
you got all that crap from Shea Given on Match of the Day 2 last night. What an absolute arsehole that fella.
What did he say?
Every single shot that went past the post, Kane would have nailed that. Kane would have nailed that. And it's like, oh, shut up, you mug. And he's like, Richarlison's nothing. Basically, if you'd have watched Match of the Day 2 last night, you would have thought Brentford had 70% possession and we had 30%. They didn't talk about the crappy penalty that got given against us. It was never a penalty in a million years. And they were raving that the Vicario challenge in the box was a nailed-on penalty, even though the ball was in row Z by the time the collision had happened.
Yeah.
And it was like,
oh, they're desperate for us to implode about Kane because it fits everything they've built up around that we're a one-man team and all that stuff. Yeah.
But it's the same with Vicario. I think, especially in the beginning, I thought he looked very nervy and he was punching. And I think in the second half, he was a bit better and he was catching them and coming out and being a bit stronger. And I think he was a bit rash when he took out that player. To be honest, I was in the pub and I held my breath for a moment. I was like, I've seen these given, But I think overall, he was okay. It was nothing brilliant, but not shocking. But I've seen comments before the game when people like Mark Schwarzer were saying, he's not good enough for the Premier League. And afterwards, you've got random people who've got no idea how the goalkeeper's supposed to play, questioning his footwork and the rest of it. They're just looking to point out he's not Raya. He's not good enough. He's not the one you should have bought. And it does my head in. They're just looking for reasons to slag us off.
It was throughout the whole team. Go on, Johnny.
No, sorry. It's just I had a chat with my eldest boy, Callum. He came around after the game, and he'd been watching it somewhere else. But he mentioned the name Aurelio Gomez, which I actually thought there are similarities, and he liked his sort of character and is sort of a little bit a little bit of a maverick, and I sort of know what he's getting at. There were some pretty rogue kind of choices. There was one in the second half when I think what's his name? I wrote it down here. There was a guy who Vicario, the Wissa, this guy Wissa or Vissa, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and he kind of whipped the ball across pretty hard and low, and Vicario just sort of flapped at it with two hands.
Yeah,
and maybe he couldn't have caught it, but it was like that he put it right down the middle of like about 25 yards out, and Damsgaard picked it up, took a touch and took a shot. And again, if it was a better player or Damsgaard on another day just had a bit more accuracy, like it was fired straight at him. But those kind of ones. But in the preseason games as well, he's made some really good saves. He does look to me like a pretty good shot stopper, and I thought his footwork. Yeah, there was a few times he came off like Hugo-esque, really, when he was so far off his line a few times. But it was a bit more decisive about it. Like from that, he wasn't in two minds. He came out and did what he had to do, and
He was confident, wasn't he? I felt he kind of like he did that kind of. He's nothing like Pickford. Well, there's some small resemblance, but he's not really like Pickford at all. But the way Pickford holds himself so confidently when he's playing for England, I kind of felt like Vikai was just kind of like puffing his chest out, like don't give a shit about the Boo Boys.
One other thing that I think I liked about his performance, I mentioned it in the chat when we were watching the game yesterday, is whenever he catches the ball on like a cross or like a shot that he can control pretty easily with his hands, he doesn't do the thing that we did under Conte, where he just holds the ball for 45 years and then rolls the ball out to a center back. He's immediately looking to release a wing back or play it up directly up to Richarlison, which created some. That was another thing that he had like a couple of times where he just booted the ball to Richarlison, and I thought Richarlison actually took those balls pretty well. But I liked that he had that he's already kind of trying to adapt to the faster pace of Ange ball and just getting the ball up the field as fast as he can. I thought that was he was
definitely, you could see him like egging on the defenders to getting frustrated when they weren't pushing out and the fullbacks weren't pushing out quick enough, and he wanted to throw the ball out, didn't he? There's also, if we move slightly further up the pitch now to kind of Van der Ven in a bit more details, I saw most people were quite appreciative of him and didn't blame that second penalty like we discussed earlier on him. It was wrong to give him.
It was a good tackle.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It was a great tackle. He got his leg in play. He played the ball, and the fella fell over. There's not even a debate on that one. It was a great tackle.
Agree, but there was always, and Tim Sherwood was one of the prominent ones who said he looked like a stiff defender who wasn't very good. But someone then quite rightly highlighted in 2014, there's an interview of Tim Sherwood saying that Vertonghen will never be a good defender. And there you go.
So that is a glowing
connoisseur.
Yes, pretty much. So he said that Vertonghen will never be able to defend. It was like, well, you're completely proven wrong. And there's some stats on him as well. He won 9 out of 10 duels on the ground. He won 4 out of 5 in the air. He won all of his take-ons, and he won every tackle. He's put
so
he missed one aerial duel all game. Like that's all.
Yeah, that's the part that I was the most impressed by, is because looking at his numbers from Wolfsburg, we all talked about it. His aerial numbers were not impressive.
Yeah,
but is looking like that may have been a product of him, the position that he played as like a wider center back rather than him not being good in the air, which was kind of confusing given his height. So hopefully this is a sign that against an aerially strong team in Brentford as well, that his aerial prowess is something that is was understated by metrics and probably passed an eye test, and will continue to pass a test when he's put up against other teams that are aerially strong.
And there was a couple of times where he got turned and had to really turn the afterburners on as well, and he dealt with that no problem. Yeah. And up front, Brentford are no slouches. All the two front guys have got pace to burn, and he wasn't left standing at any moment.
No. I was going to say though as well, he had about 3 days of training as well.
Yeah,
before
3 sessions.
He made his debut.
I think
sessions.
I think Ange said 3 sessions he's had, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You've come from a different league and 3 sessions. You've not really got used to playing with your CB partner who then goes off after 15 minutes, and you nail it.
Yeah. I don't want to spend
CB partner. I would like to
go on. I was
going to say the same thing. I think that Sanchez did. He didn't do brilliantly, but he did the job. He did the job, and I'm not really much to fault him.
Mentally strong.
Are we ready for the 5th Davinson Sanchez experiment?
Better than the 8th.
No, but you can't knock what he did at the weekend.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. You couldn't ask of him to done more. Stood up under pressure, forced into that situation, and I think we all know he's above Dyer in the pecking order now. So he's obviously doing the right things in Ange's eyes. And Johnny, you were trying to say something there. Sorry, mate. I think we all tried to say
I was actually going to make the point there about Sanchez, but the other thing that I don't think anyone's mentioned yet is just, and I know a lot, including people on the group here, were commenting about the substitution situation. And it is interesting when you've got a competitive match, what decisions Ange makes as opposed to during the friendlies. And most people, and I would be amongst them as well, were surprised that Sutherland didn't come on and that Decky stayed on. That's the really obvious one, I think. And you could even argue Porro would have been worth the punt, but certainly Solomon is the obvious player to come on.
Yeah.
There's also the interesting situation now with Sonny's captaincy. And Sonny, okay, it's his first game of the season. Maybe he'll get into his stride. But it was 75 minutes again before he came off, and I thought when Perisic came on, that definitely improved things on the left as well. So it was like, it's interesting where what is this going to be what Ange does, because there's 3 substitutions, one of them's enforced, and didn't take advantage of the others. And like obviously Sarr came on for Skip. Like I thought it would have been what I was kind of hoping that would happen earlier, and it's also to consider going forward. Would you have Sarr? I'd have Sarr before Skip personally, on the basis of performances when they've both been there. I mean, I just think he offers a little bit more. Like Skip works really, really hard. He didn't do very much wrong, but he didn't contribute as much either. So there's just those sorts of interesting little angles when it comes to decision making during the game. So I don't know what the rest of you think about that. And just, like, the players that didn't feature, and Højbjerg maybe that's because there's a transfer kind of in the pipeline. But,
feels like it with him.
It does.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
And you're right. With just to clear this up, and you guys can correct me. Ange's wingers, right? Because we're going to dive into Kulu and Son in a bit more detail. Why they looked ineffective? Was that them playing poorly? Or is it the system? But my understanding is they should be really wide. And they should almost be like strikers on the wing, but they should be kind of like poacher-type strikers high up the pitch. But it felt like the game, when I was watching it, they were kind of quite deep. They'd pick the ball, they couldn't beat their man, they'd lose it, and then Richie would just stand there as a lost man at sea. And then eventually he'd get the ball by the keeper punting it up to him. But it did feel a bit like there was a big disconnect on those flanks.
Yeah.
I do think that it improved in the second half.
Sorry, did you?
I was just going to say, I think it improved in the second half.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think that because I remember thinking it was like I don't remember the minute exactly, but I know that I remember because I know in the first half we did almost no man beating. But on the second, I know Kulu and Son both brought it to the touchline a couple times in the second half before Son was taken off. So hopefully it's more of just falling into habits from playing under the type of management we have for the past 3 seasons, whatever. And it's something that will eventually work out of them. I do think that I would like to see Son centrally, but who knows if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear that Ange at halftime put a rocket up their arses because, you could see the way they were playing was not the way we played in preseason. It's not the way Ange's teams play. It was really, a lot of times it did remind me of last season, kind of just passing back and forth, no movement. And in the second half, it was a different game altogether where we dominated possession. There was a lot more movement. But before we talk about midfield and attack, can I just, obviously with my Italian background, put out a word for a 20-year-old making his debut at left back who, coming from a farmers league, played his socks off. He was absolutely brilliant.
He was great.
Yeah, he was.
He was just, oh man. There were a couple of times there was 1v1 with whoever was down there at the time, and just no getting by him. And then he was wonderful and build up play. I can't wait for him to get his first competitive
Very
goal.
strong physically, isn't he? As well?
Yeah, he's a big lad, isn't he?
Powerful.
Yeah.
And just to think, we could have waited for 3 years and let Chelsea buy him for 150 million.
Yeah. There's literally
Not 3 years. They would have bought him this summer
On a 24-year contract.
Do you know what? You could, if you've seen that video of when there's like promoting women's football, and you watch this clip of men's football, and then they switch this. They put the switch, and then
French
actually, it's the women playing. Yeah, I kind of felt you could have done that with Bissouma and Maddison today with Eriksen and Dembele on certain points of their games. It feels like those massive holes we never replaced. we've got the creativity back finally in Maddison, and 2 assists says it all, doesn't it? And then you've just some of those moments of Bissouma, like you guys said earlier, just ghosting past players. There's just so many positives from that game.
Yeah.
The only negatives really are Romero's concussion, which was Vicario. I wouldn't say it's disappointing. It was just okay. Let's wait and see what happens with him. And then Kulu and Son being ineffective overall. But I think there was
Skip.
And Skip. But Skip's, I see he's like our John O'Shea in midfield. He's our utility player. That's just going to cover any of those three. Either cover Bissouma or Bentancur when they're injured. That's it.
I think Skip's performance suffered somewhat because of Kulu's performance as well. Because Skip clearly had the instruction to move out wide for Kulu to come inside to open up that channel in the midfield. And because Kulu wasn't doing his job properly, I think Skip was doing the runs and he was making the moves to that outside right position, but there was nothing happening inside that was then linking the play up. So, I think it was a bit disappointing. Most of our good work came down the left, right?
Yeah.
Well, nearly all of our stuff, all of our good stuff came down the left, and even Emerson's goal was from the left-hand side of the D on the edge of the box.
Another positive we talked about in preseason, but Emerson looks very, very good in that role.
He does. He got taken for pace a couple of times down the left, didn't he? Though that was against Rashford or something on Saturday. That's a watch out. He's going to need some help there.
Yeah. Well, it took Kane 6 years to get his first goal in August, and Royale did it on his first game of the season. So there you go. We need to kind of move on a little bit from Brentford, but I still want to. There's two topics to finish up on there. One I want to just highlight. It's a small thing, but I think it's significant. Did you notice the huddles that were happening in front of the away fans,
in front of the crowd?
They were supposedly it's reports coming out they were a conscious decision by Son and Maddison that it was the right thing to do in front of the away fans and to make sure the team felt united with them. I thought that was really, really nice. I don't know if I believe the leaks. It's like they've got a rat in the team if someone's leaking that out to the media. But
Postecoglou said it.
Madison said it. Yeah, and Madison said it as well
in the press conference.
I thought
he was asked about it. He said, "Did you tell the team to do that? Because the Celtic team used to do that as well." He said, and he was asked, "Did you tell the guys to do it?" And he said, "No, that was Sonny and the vice captains. That was totally their
Madison
seen it at Celtic or not. It's irrelevant." But it was
Madison said that Sonny sent him a WhatsApp the night before saying, "I want to do this," and Madison said, "Yep, let's do it."
Yeah,
I really like our new leadership group.
Did you see Ange as well? They went over to clap them, and then he went, "That's not good enough. Get back out there and do it again properly." Right. I thought it was that was brilliant. Yeah, they walked over kind of half-assed, did it, and then he was like, he just went up with them and like, "No, come with me."
Get yourself
like,
back out there, boys.
Your dad forces you to apologise or go out there and do it properly. Like, you haven't washed the car properly for him. No.
Speaking of which, how funny was it? Because I was a bit worried for a moment when Romero was refusing to come off, and I had flashbacks of, was it Kepa that refused to come off at Chelsea?
Yeah.
And you could see him like, no, and just like, "No, get off now." He put on his dad's voice, and Romero's like, "Yeah, all right then."
Sorry. He was giving the thumbs up to the floodlights. I'm all right.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, he was.
And Angie's like, "No, Christian, we're over here, son. I'm
fine, Dad. No, you're definitely not.
He's took a standing 8 count. He's got his gloves up."
Yeah. He was wobbling all over the shop. And the other small topic from the game was, before we move on, because we've got a couple bits to cover off in the next 20 minutes, so sorry to rush through, but it was the away kit. I saw a lot of praise for it online. I personally loved it, but our Italian stallion on the pod, Stu, says no.
No, I don't like the clash of the dark blue's lovely, but the light blue, I don't like the clash with it, and then the kind of whatever color it is that in the little V, and then on the armpits. No, not happy.
I went to buy one a minute ago and it was 150 quid, and I just laughed. But, for the top.
That's insane.
Yeah, especially when you're kind of our age. We're not Arsenal. I don't wear it like outside of the house. Yeah. So unlike them, it's a bit of a waste of money. That was Brentford. Any final comments before we move on? You're happy?
It's amazing what it'll do to a kit when Aya isn't red.
The other, I suppose, point which maybe you're going to come onto anyway, it's just like, I know that Ange is saying that the priority is about getting the size of the squad down, but it's also like a review of, well, it's only one game, but there's less than 3 weeks now till the window closes, and what does it show or indicate we should still be doing? And I know during the game, Jim, it's like your pet that you've been talking about for months and months is the whole centre-back thing, which is dead right. And I think, especially when you see Romero going off after 12 minutes, then and Sanchez did a decent job, but it does definitely highlight that we need another person in there. And what sort of level of player that would be is an interesting one. There's your man Torino fellas getting heavily linked now. Per Schiller. Sure. Yeah, there you go.
Do you know anything about him, Stu? Sure, we got you on that.
Yes. So he was actually my fantasy football team last season, along with Udogie, and he had a really good season for Torino. He's obviously Ajax youth. Really, really good on the ball. He's really commanding. So he came in as like the bench player. He, within 3 or 4 games of coming on as a substitute, established himself as a starter. He's really organized, as you would expect from an Ajax youth player. The only thing that I don't know if he's quick enough. But obviously, our data analysts will have that. But that's my question mark on him. I think he'd be a good backup. He wouldn't be, I don't think we'd want him as a starter, but a good backup to Van de Ven.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of what we're going for now. So.
Yeah, at least like now we have a structure. It feels like the attributes of every player we need to sign. It makes it a lot cleaner, the whole process, doesn't it? Which is nice. And sorry, Johnny, were you going to touch on anyone else there? Because you're leading into the transfer conversations, I guess.
I suppose it's the Richarlison situation, and I've been probably one of his strongest kind of supporters, or certainly advocating giving him the opportunity for a run of games. And I just definitely think it's far too soon to be saying, we don't stick with Richie because it's one game. And yeah, he had a couple of chances where there was one really nice move halfway through the second half. I think Maddison played one of those eye the needle passes, and he took it quite well low on his right, and it was a decent save by the keeper. So I do kind of think that we should. This fella gift that we've been mentioning before, like the more I've seen a few more compilations, and if you get somebody like that, I know it's like not monopoly money, but 25 or 30 million for it's worth a punt, isn't it? I don't know.
I don't see what makes him
striker.
Any higher risk than who Man United have just signed for 80 million. Like, has anyone watched much of him? Gift Orban, because I know it's the Belgium league, so it's the Farmers Conference League, I guess, to some people. But it's but there's still some amazing players that have come from there, so we can't completely discount it. You've got to think of all the incredible Belgium national team they had for that generation, and they all started in the Belgium league. So I don't think we should knock it. And even like the Dutch league, right? It's got massive clubs, but it's still the standard still produces in that league. Wonderful Premier League legends come out of these divisions. So Dele Alli's
PSV's got a couple of youngsters.
Yeah. Any centre backs?
No. Only forward players. Midfielders and wide players.
Well, we might need them next season. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. But yeah,
the problem with signing players though is even if we move out Lloris, Ndombele, Reggie, we still only have space for one foreigner, which means we've got to shift out another foreigner on top of that.
But that's only if
Højbjerg goes,
Europe, isn't it? Yeah. So we kind of got another.
No. Even for us, we still have 17 foreigners. We're only allowed to have in the Premier League squad.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I think we're going to get rid of more than that because Dyer counts as a foreign player, doesn't he?
If he goes,
but even if he doesn't go, he's not going to be in the squad.
You don't think they're going to put him in the squad?
He wasn't even in the squad yesterday, so he's but he's still in the squad ahead of Dyer yesterday.
But that's the match day squad. There's a difference between your match day squad of what is it?
No, I get 19? that. I get that, but not even to make the. Well, I mean, what have you got now? 9. You got 20.
20.
You got 20 in the match day squad now. You got 9 on the bench. You can use 5, right?
Yeah.
Not even to make the bench, then that sends a message. So I think.
I mean, I like Dyer. I think he's a nice person, and I think
character-wise,
and I think he's intelligent as well. And I think he's intelligent enough to look in the mirror, look at the way they played, look at the way he played against Barcelona, and realize he's not made for this.
He just hasn't got the pace, has he?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the ball over the top?
Vertonghen at the end of his time was a bit like that as well. Like, and I kept like thinking, "Come on," because exactly what Stu's just said. I thought, like, you are smart and you've been unbelievable, and like it's just sad to see, especially the pace side of things. Just, I guess it's probably quite a tough reality to accept though, because he's been there so long, you know.
Yeah. But end of an era. I think you were discussing it in the last season, Stu. It's just nice. I'm fine with Sonny still being there because he's a bit different. But I just want all the old guard just gone. I just want a new era now and some fresh blood. And I do actually like it. Might be
move on.
Yeah, it might be really harsh, but I do question whether they are a personality group that would ever get it over the line anyway. There's the way some of these characters have the way Kane left. Just put a few question marks on me for him, like ending up just choosing Bayern, and the way Dyer sounds like he's. Yeah, I don't know. Like Dyer's fine, but he just seems to be happy in his comfort zone here with us. And there's a few, and there's Anyway, I don't want to get into it too much. But anyway, let's.
He's got to learn German to complain to the ref as well.
Oh, that's brilliant! Yeah,
that was hilarious.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Does anyone else? I know it's going to be controversial. Anyone else kind of enjoy being able to take the piss out of Kane a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah.
If only there was a German word for it. If only there was a German word for taking consolation.
We've spent years defending everything about him, the way he dives, the way he does, his interviews, everything. Now it's just like, game on.
In store now. We've got it all in stock. Right, what stock Kane reference am I going to go to now?
Exactly. Very good. So there was. I did want to touch on Chelsea though on the topic of transfers quickly because they've just gone on the most ridiculous spending spree. And it's just breaking now that they did reduce the loophole that you can use amortization to spread the value of a player over the length of their contract, and they moved it down to 5 years.
I thought UEFA had done that already.
They did it in Europe.
They did it in Europe.
We have not done it in the Premier League yet, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Morons.
So it's just been announced that Liverpool have complained to the Premier League along with some other clubs. Don't know who.
What?
And they are now going to. We built a whole model around this needing to be implemented. So of course we're one of them. And then it's happening now in the Premier League, but it's too late because they'll be allowed to maintain what they've done. So they'll just have an advantage for the next 5 years, and then it'll level out afterwards.
It's only like we're corrupt.
Yeah.
But it's a high-risk strategy from Chelsea, though, isn't it? Because what they're gambling on is that every single person they give an 8-year deal to is going to be a success. If they fall flat on their face, they've got no resale value.
What did they do with their players that had no resale value? They used their connections in Saudi this summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The Saudi league is going to be huge for them.
Yeah,
it's going to make this business model work.
The thing I hate about Chelsea, they have destroyed football more than any other club. They started this with Abramovich, this whole massive surge in financial overseas money coming to the Premier League and just pumping it and destroying La Liga and Serie A, trying to keep up with it all. They were the first people to do that. And now what they're happy to do is start selling really good players in their prime to the Saudi League and start strengthening that division to a point where it's going to then damage the Premier League. They are the most horrible, toxic football club you could ever. I know Arsenal are our rivals, and they will always be our number one rivals. But Chelsea are, even if we don't support Spurs, you have to see them as the most disgusting club. And they always have issues of racism amongst their fan bases and all that.
They're the filthiest club. They're a horrible, dirty. I hate Arsenal more because they're Arsenal, but Chelsea have just got some. They're just dirty.
Yeah,
they're horrible. They're racist. Oh, we're not racist. Yes, you are. You still are. There's still a fundamental core there that pretty much every single Chelsea supporter I know from the estate back at home, racist. lads.
We're turning into the Open University now, lads. This is
They are a bunch of pricks.
precise, rigorous.
Oh God, I hope they're not watching. They're not watching this. I didn't mean it, fellas. I'm going back at the weekend. Shit.
Wait for you with the baseball bat.
Yeah. And just finish on their spending thing as well. I know we've all seen the stat now, but they have spent £17 million per point under Bowley to achieve every single point. The next closest was, I believe, 7 million, so less than half, which was actually West Ham, because they didn't earn very many points last season.
If they don't get Champions League again for a second year in a row, this could have serious implications, surely.
Well, they're fine because it's the FIFA's, it's the European financial regulations they've been breaking, but because they're not in Europe, none of this matters. So actually, them being out of Europe for a couple of years, if Todd's happy to swallow the losses, they've got time to kind of sort this
what
out.
the Premier League rules then?
I think it will still come back and bite them at some point, because if you look at their transfers so far, it's not all Saudi. It's not. They've only had 3 transfers to Saudi. So Saudi can't buy them out of this 115 million, 75 million here. The transfers they've got in now on these 7, 8, 9-year contracts, whatever they're putting them on, they're banking on every single one of those being a success and having a significant resale value. Otherwise, that negatively impacts FFP in the future. Yeah. And so their top three outgoings this year, or top 3 sales, is Havertz, Mount, and Kovacic. So they've got good money for those guys. I mean, Kai Havertz, how they got £75 million for Arsenal, that fellow, I don't know. Mount 64, that's looking about ballpark, given Declan Rice, etc. I tell you what, it don't half make Maddison look like good value at 40 million, doesn't it? Net 30. Yeah, Jesus.
They will be. I think they're going to be completely reliant on, like we said earlier, the Saudi league, because if they close this amortization loophole, the knock-on effect is prices are going to. Clubs aren't going to take as many risky big signings on. Like especially Arsenal. Arsenal as well going to be massively impacted by that, because their whole strategy has been a very similar thing: young players, long-term contracts, low wages. Chelsea's is it's big wages on top though.
So they're banking on this. They're banking on Nkunku, who's injured at the moment, obviously, but they paid 60 million for him. They're banking. They got him on something like a 7-year deal. They're banking that at some point during that 7 years, he's going to be worth more than 60 million. Well, it's a bit of a punt, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I know they think they've got a number 9 sorted now, but they still need to.
Yeah, especially as you say, Jim. Especially if the Premier League closed the loophole a little bit, and then the values. You can't amortise it over that long period of time. You can only do it over 5. If the Premier League closed that loophole, that's going to bring down the potential of the of those high sale prices anyway. So it's risky. And who else can pay that money? Saudi, yes. Who else though? Premier League. Yeah, and if the loophole's closed in the Premier League. Do you really believe Moises Caicedo is going to significantly increase on his real-time value on 116 million?
No.
I don't know. No. They can probably sell him to Chelsea or Arsenal in like 3 years if he doesn't reach his potential. Apparently, that's what they do.
But it's. I mean, if it comes off, it's genius. But it's very, very high risk for Bowley.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's almost like it's not. They still could get points deductions because of what happened under Abramovich.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that some people were wondering if this is in preparation for a transfer ban, and I guess that would make sense. I think anything would ever happen to them.
I think they'll be told, well, thank you for bringing to light these terrible things that happened before you came on board. Well done. Just make sure you don't do it, and tick on the.
Because they can't do anything to Chelsea without doing similar to City, and they're not going to do anything to City.
Yeah,
but sorry, Jim, you're the one who knows more than many about this. What is the difference between the FFP for Europe and FFP for the Premier League?
Yeah, there's stricter rules in Europe about the amount of loss you can make over a 3-year period, isn't there? I think.
And the Premier League, they don't have that?
They do, but it's a lot softer and there's a lot more. I'll have to look it up for next time, but there's a lot more like loopholes to it to basically make it much easier to get around. And the only punishment would be if you broke the European one would be pretty much, I imagine, a temporary suspension from playing in the Champions League and because it's working for FIFA. People are saying, we were discussing it in the group, that what FIFA actually like this model because big fines work perfectly for them. They've basically got a new revenue stream, which is fining clubs for breaking the rules. And the clubs don't mind paying the fine. They'd rather that than a point deduction. So it's like a win-win for this whole corrupt bollocks model. But there you go. We've only got 5 minutes or so left, and we've got Man United still to preview. So let's quickly dive into that. Does anyone, aside from Romero, because the concussion you can have a maximum of up to 2 weeks.
Will he be out for the week?
Well, it's typically 7 days, I believe, from when you have the... Or was it more? Was it 2 weeks?
Because it wasn't technically a concussion substitution either.
It wasn't a concussion substitution, so
they did the wrong paperwork.
Under that. Exactly. So I think it depends what the doc says when they check him.
Right.
And if he passes the concussion test, I think we'll play him.
Last season, I don't think he would have come out of the game last season, or the other day. But I think based on, I guess I watch too much American football, but usually a concussion in American football, you smell some smelling salts, you get a slap on the ass, and you get back out there. So I trust this. I trust Ange to make the right decision, but I guess it is in the hands of our medical team, and that is always a good thing.
But do we?
He's out a month then.
I despise our medical team. Is that, apart from Romero, though, do we expect anyone else to be changed in the team? Do we expect that maybe one of those wingers?
You might see Sarr instead of Skip. You might see
instead of Skip.
Yeah.
I'd like Solomon to give him a run out.
Yeah, I think that might happen.
I think Solomon will feature. I'm surprised Solomon didn't feature at all.
I heard that it's because you're only allowed to make substitutions at 3 different times.
Yes, you are.
Of course.
And so we weren't able to
Romero.
Because
Romero wasn't.
And we must have thought it was a concussion sub, and then we were going to bring Solomon on later, and then we tried to. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
And also, Brentford would have got an additional sub as well. So if you make a concussion substitution, that means you get 6 subs, which means the opponent gets 6 substitutions.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think you'll see a similar team to that. I think Romero will be back.
Yeah.
I think you'll see Gift Orban in the squad.
I wouldn't be surprised if we signed him this week by the reports you're seeing. But then it feels weird that we've still got all these outgoings and they aren't gathering any momentum, really.
I've got a conspiracy theory on this. So I believe Kent are still having to qualify for the Champions League. So they're playing qualifying games. So I think we've already done the deal until they finish their qualifying rounds, and then he'll be signed.
You mean it's one of those where it's agreed in principle, all that stuff.
Exactly.
ITK, right there.
ITK, you got it here first, everyone.
That would make sense, given that higher tier sources, not the ones that have a account created 4 minutes ago saying a deal has been done. But sources like Romano, tap-in merchants, say that we are, quote unquote, know the terms of the deal, but haven't submitted a formal offer.
Right.
That would make sense.
Some of this stuff just seems such rubbish, isn't it? It's like Tottenham have readied the bid, it's ready to go, and they'll send it in a few days. So why would you just have it all ready and be like, I'm going for a cup of tea, I'll send it on Thursday? Like, it just seems like
tax machine's broken.
Yeah, it just feels bizarre.
Gone are the days where you found out on the back of the newspaper, for God's sake.
Yeah, good old days.
They're actually the Conference League qualifiers. And they've won. They're the third round first leg. They won at 5-0, so I don't think they're in much danger.
But there's another one after that, though.
Is there? All right, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'd imagine
Scores?
they get through fairly handily.
Ooh.
Scores tomorrow, though. Do we think they're going to set up? And I think Ten Hag's tactically astute enough to know that he's not going to come out and try and outplay us away. He's going to go for the counter attack and exploit the weaknesses of the team.
Yeah.
His midfield is going to be a lot stronger. Casemiro is just incredible. It's going to be a great duel watching Casemiro and Bissouma playing against each other. Actually,
yeah.
But there will be. I think what they're going to do is, they're just going to sit back on the counter and they're going to try break with Rashford going over the back of us, who Van de Ven will be stuck closely to. But,
Wolves are currently giving them a better game than I was expecting. So,
they're playing at the moment.
Yeah. So so far and I looked at their lineup, to be honest, and I wasn't overly impressed. They've spent a fair bit of money, but I don't think they're that strong, to be perfectly honest. So I think that I think they'll struggle this year.
Yeah,
especially the renaissance of Liverpool and Chelsea will be stronger.
Yeah.
Onana's a great keeper, though.
Yeah.
I think he's really, really good, and he's going to help them build out from the back a lot better.
I agree with that.
When he's not getting done from the halfway line.
Yeah, yeah,
that was funny.
But he is like Edison in the way that he could be an outfield player at times. You're like, well, that's not a goalkeeper. If you take the gloves off, you wouldn't know. So aside from that, I think we've got a bit of an advantage against them as well because we've obviously had an extra day to prepare for the game, and they're playing away at Wolves, I believe, which doesn't help. And they're playing away at
they're playing home. They're playing home
away
right
to
now.
us, sorry, but it's Manchester, so that's a whole day's travel gone. So we've got a 2-day extra training then between the fixtures. Yeah. I actually think for the first time in 5 years, I'm actually confident we might actually get a result against Man United. Like I'm confident we would get a result. I actually think we might beat them, and then it will start the higher expectations on Tottenham.
What are you saying, Jim? Because you were the only one got.
Yeah, you're the Mystic Meg.
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to go for us going 1-0 down and then coming back second half and winning 3-1, and then us all wetting our pants in excitement, talking of a title race and getting a reality check against someone else. But I still that's my prediction. Go on. What about you, Johnny?
I hope you're right because I am concerned about getting to Northumberland Park to get a train up to Stansted. And I fly out at 9:30. And on the basis of 11 minutes added at the end of the first half against Brentford and 5 in the second half, I am not going to see the end of this game. So if it's 3-1...
Well, at least you're on that side of the ground now, though.
That's why I'm on that side of the ground. I'm sorry, it's a very long answer to an easy question, but no, I think I'm worried it's going to be... I think we'll win. I'm going to say 2-1. I hope it's 3-1 with 60 minutes gone and it stays that way. So fingers crossed you make it 2 out of 2, Jim.
Yeah. Go on, Stu.
I'm a bit worried by the speed of Rashford. And it is Man United, and I've been scarred so many times in the past. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Si, go on, mate.
I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. I think we'll win, though. I think that we'll surprise a lot of people. I think we'll win that midfield battle. I think Bissouma's going to step up. I hope Sarr plays as well. I think give Sarr a run. I'm going to go 3-1.
Yes. And Deej?
I think that I don't trust our defense to handle the pace of their front, at least their wide players. That being said, I also think that they aren't as secure at the back as they kind of look on paper, or if you look at what they say on Twitter. So I think that it will be. I think that they will score twice, then we'll score 3, and then they'll score in Fergie time, and it'll be a 3-3 draw.
Interesting. All right. I like all of that. To be honest, a point, again, if it's positive play, even if we lose, if we don't lose in the manner in which we lost when, the end of Nuno was dawning and all that, I just want this positive, progressive football, like I said before. I wouldn't care. I would prefer we were top half of the table doing really well. But if we were 10th at Christmas, but all these positive momentum was still building and players were settling in and we had a strong second half of the season, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I think you'll see, as Ange said at the outset, they're doing stuff because he's telling them to do stuff at the moment. And that was clear, I think, at Brentford, that when they stopped thinking about what they were doing, they fell back into some old habits. And I think it took a little bit of like we said, a rocket at half-time or whatever it was to get them going again. It will take half a dozen games for them to start thinking, or not even thinking about it, for it to start to become a natural way of playing, which is why I don't think he disrupts the side too much on Saturday. He might bring Sarr in, but I think he's going to try and keep a steady side for a number of games because you're not going to get that level
True.
of intimacy
That's a good
between the
point.
players by chopping and changing it every week. I think he's going to start with trying to keep a settled side. I would if I was him, but then again, I'm not. So, yeah, mate. You know, mate. Yeah, mate.
You sure you're not him?
You mate. Yeah, mate.
Well, we have to wrap
I don't
up
know,
there,
mate.
guys. As I'm way over time and I've got to shoot, but lovely to catch up as always. We're finally in a state of positivity and on the rise again, it feels. First time in 5-6 years, I think I can say that. So, yes, up the Spurs. And
Go
I'll
on,
see
you
a few of
Spurs.
you at
Go on,
Man
you
United, at the
Spurs.
Man United game on Saturday. Come on, Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Yeah, man. Go on, Tottenham.